Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you've been well. Today, we're mostly talking about this guy here, the Anker SOLIX F3800. What makes this unique here is that it does 240 on board. What that means is, if you've been watching the channel, if you've been following along, I got this barn here, this big black barn, separate from my house. Now the barn doesn't have power to it. It's not built yet. I'm gonna do a full build out. I'm gonna do a bunch of stuff to it, but that's gonna take a while, some planning, permitting, things like that. But right here, under this dirty tarp and some mulch and max tracks to hold it down, is a couple of lifts that BenPack actually sent out. More on that later when they're not under the tarps, but I didn't have a great place to put them, so I put them up against here. But what we have here is a 2-post lift, a 4-post lift, and a big fan and a couple other things in there. And the 2-post lift, and actually the big fan as well, require 240 volts. 240 volts is what comes into most houses, and then that's split into 120 or 240. If you have like a dryer, an electric range, an air conditioner, those are typically running off of 240 volts, well pump, things like that. And your regular kind of standard household stuff is on 120. Now most battery packs will do 120 and some will do 240 when you kind of combine them together through a little gadget or gizmo or whatever. This one is pretty unique. I think there's maybe a couple out there. I think this was the first, the Anker, the F3800, that does 240 natively from a single unit. Let's grab it. So this unit here, kind of an interesting form factor, as with all of my kind of product reviews of this type of stuff. I'm gonna be talking more on features and functionality. I'm not gonna be reading you the brochure of specs, though I will get into some specs a little bit later. I'm gonna be talking about real world use, how this might fit in to your kit. We're not kind of a nerdy, we are nerds here, don't get me wrong, but we're not one of those nerdy channels that's just plugging a bunch of things in and being like, oh my gosh, it runs a hairdryer. Obviously it does. These quick little hint, whenever these outlets, you know, if they're proper, have this little, in the US here, these are US outlets, have this little guy here, they are 20 amp circuits. If they don't, if they're just like that, typically they're on a 15 amp circuit. Most households have 15 amp circuits. Sometimes you have kitchens or whatever that have 20 amp circuits. I did my whole house with 20 amp everywhere for every circuit. But anyway, 20 amp circuit can handle more, you guessed it, amps, so more watts, so more power. So whenever you see a device that has the little T, chances are it's a 20 amp and can handle kind of more than your regular household outlet. Now, again, some households have 20 amp outlets, mine does, and it's not super uncommon, but just so you know, without wasting your time watching me plug a toaster in and a coffee maker and oh my gosh, it's gonna power everything that your standard household outlet will power. I don't understand why people don't use that. There's a relatively simple formula as well to kind of figure out how long X is gonna run. I don't like to talk about that very often because outside of something like a space heater, you're not doing a constant 3-hour draw of whatever. So it's usually gonna be a lower draw device that's kind of churning long-term. Like even a refrigerator, like how long can it run a refrigerator? Well, there's a lot of factors that come into play. How often is it kicking on? What kind of refrigerator is it? How often are you opening and closing the door? What's in the refrigerator? So there's a lot of factors at play, so I don't like to get into that, but you basically take the watt hours of a battery, how many watts that's gonna take, and you can say about 80% of that is gonna be how long it should essentially run something. So you lose a little bit of inefficiency with an inverter. Batteries are DC, direct current. These kind of plugs are AC, alternating current. You need to run an inverter. Now, it's a little more efficient if you're running DC. DC, direct current, are things like USB ports, car sockets, things of that nature. So you're gonna technically get longer usage out of 100 watts of USB than you are 100 watts of AC. So that's just a quick little, a lot of you guys probably know that already. So yeah, what's cool here is we got all of your regular standard outlets. This is surge protection. This is how you turn it off. Very simple. Once it's on, just hit it. LED light goes on. It's on. So like I mentioned earlier, the beauty of this, the one single machine here, is this is rated, it has 6,000 watt inverters. You can add 6 batteries onto this, and you can link 2 of these units up. If you add 6 batteries, you can get up to, I believe it's 26,880 watt hours. You double that if you do the 2, and then so you can get 12,000 watts of output when you combine it. But from a single unit, you can get 6,000 watts of output, and you can do 240. Can you see it here? So these will do 120 or 240. So if you want to plug in your 120 RV into this and run off of this instead of shore power, you can. It has the NEMA 1450 as well as the L1430. Now, if these plugs don't line up with what you got for your RV or whatever appliance you're trying to run, there are a bunch of different adapters on there. You just need to figure out what you're adapting to what. But these 2 plugs can do 240 or 120. So that's pretty unique. Here we have your standard USB car socket. I just went over that. This is how you connect a phone to it. This has both Bluetooth and Wi-Fi functionality with YAP, which I'll show you in a second. Then this can connect to kind of Anker's Home Connect ecosystem. I don't have any of that stuff, so I'm not gonna be talking about that in this video, but you can connect it to basically a home panel and get kind of some smart home features, some full home backup functionality there. So this can be used to back up an entire house. Now, not probably at full bore, but if you connect a bunch of them, then you could get a usable system like that. These, even the big ones like this, I think of, this is next to a 37-inch tire for reference. These are more kind of hybrid units. You can kind of use them portability. They got wheels built in, handles, so you could use it for a big tailgating event, RV, home backup, run a CPAP machine, things like that. So they're not as good if you're just primarily 100% using it for home backup, but if you want a unit that kind of does multiple things at once, it is pretty good. Now, some of these units charge really, really fast. You charge them from like EV chargers and stuff like that. The Anker F3800 keeps it a little more simple. You do get more features when you go through their system, and that kind of unlocks some different functionality. But again, I don't have it, so we're not gonna talk about it too much in this video. But standard plug here, you can charge up to 1,800 watts off of your standard household outlet. Has 2 solar inputs, so it's 2,400 watts total. That's split between the 2 ports. So it's kind of nice because if you have several different portable solar panels, but you don't have the adapters to combine them, you can kind of plug 2 right in. This is how you connect to the external batteries as well through a proprietary external battery connector. A lot of fans on board. And then you can also use it as a big UPS, uninterruptible power supply. So if you want to keep this plugged into your wall all the time and then keep some crucial things plugged in, maybe computers, servers, internet, again, CPAP machine, refrigerator, something like that, this does have UPS functionality. They are labeled here, so these 3 along the side are your UPS ones, and these ones are not. Other than that, they'll function pretty much the same. One of the more interesting things about this, other than everything I've kind of gone over in that, is really the form factor. It's kind of interesting in that sense. It's a little taller, it's a little narrower, so when you need to put this somewhere, you need to, kind of tuck it away into a little corner and get it out of the way. It's much easier to maneuver. It kind of has the wheels on the bottom like a suitcase, but then very easy to transport like this. Now it is a pretty heavy beast, so we needed to lift it and put it up in a truck or something, which the form factor does work well. Here's a little clip of that. So it's got a little handle under here. Without too much effort, it can fit nicely in underneath a bed cover. So you can see, really, tons of room still back here. Then you can do that. These wheels are lockable, like little locking casters, and then it won't go anywhere on you. And then you can unlock them. But yeah, handles all around here, and these little rubber bumper feet for when you wanna fold it down nice. So how it fits in for me is in the interim, once I have some of my 240 volt lifts and stuff set up, I can use this to power them. I'm not gonna run a 240 volt, 100-foot extension cord from my house out here in the interim. I can run a regular extension cord, which I actually do have run in, so that's actually how I primarily power the garage doors and some other stuff out here. But this is another unit where I can just wheel it over or leave it out here, or I can hook it up to solar, again, southern facing over here, real nice, and kind of realistically power everything that this barn will do. That's gonna be lights, that's gonna be occasionally powering a lift. So without adding like all of the expansion batteries and doubling it up and then connecting 2400 watts of solar, with something as simple as this one machine, realistically I can power everything out here, assuming I'm not running like a hot water heater or a dryer or an electric range or anything like that. This will be enough to power like a little refrigerator, lights, the occasional 240 volt use of something that is very intermittent, like a 2-post lift that'll go over here. So when I was kind of looking at all like units that could handle a bunch of stuff, this was actually one of the few. I forget if I mentioned it earlier, Anker did send this out to me, sponsored this video as well. So I'm never biased in videos. I say whatever I want. I never sign anything that says, I will not say anything negative. But the use case of this, while I have been using it and testing it out, the real tests will come once I have like the lifts and the fans and some other 240 volt stuff, because that is really kind of the unique thing about this. Whether I'm gonna wire up a panel and eventually run permanent power into here and make it more of a permanent solution that requires more permitting and stuff and more planning, and then I'd probably run a little generator with an interconnect, disconnect on the main panel, so that way I could just plug this in and run everything off of that. So that's kind of how you'd use this in a backup scenario. I just don't have anything like that set up right now. So you could use this, you use it basically like a generator, plug this into your generator inlet port on your house, assuming you have one. You could back up your whole house off of this. Granted, again, 6,000 watts, so you're not gonna be able to run crazy electronics. It could handle an AC, a relatively decent size air conditioner that's pulling, 4,000 watts or something like that. You could handle that. So this unit can back up a whole house. It's just, I don't have it set up because I got no wiring in this. And I'm actually, in my current house, going through a deep exploratory dive of exactly what I want to do for solar and battery backup. I'm basically going to turn my house fully off. It's connected to the grid right now, but I'm going to make it fully off-grid capable. And now whether I want to do something more permanent, more kind of like single-purposed, or if I want something a little more modular, I'm not sure. But you could expand a thing like this to actually run an entire house, assuming you do have some solar limitations with that. Now, the solar panel. Getting 400 watts of solar in a relatively portable system is great. 400 watts is a lot of solar. It's more solar than I could ever hard mount realistically on even an SUV. So for that to fit in the back of a small Volkswagen Golf is pretty impressive. Now you don't want to stack stuff on top of this, and it's actually just a little bit hung up on the corner on this particular setup. So if I would get it down, yeah, I could actually get it down. So you'd want it flat. You could store some stuff, you know, you could put some duffel bags or something light that isn't gonna like penetrate and crack this on top, but ideally you don't put much stuff or heavy stuff or sharp stuff on top. Because while these kind of panels are a little bit flexible, you flex them too much and they will crack and damage the cells. So got a little bit of flexibility, but definitely, you know, I would treat these things as something that you really do not want to flex. So just wanted to show it in kind of one of the smaller spaces that you might realistically try to put it. Back of an SUV, you'd have more room. Back of a truck, obviously, even more. So when you're able, something like this, where it's nice and tall, you know, taking up a minimal amount of space, nothing really giving it a ton of pressure or any, obviously it'll flop over like this. So assuming you're loading up for a trip or something and you got gear stacked up, probably I would say opt for something like that where you kind of have a bag or something wedged in here. And that would be a pretty nice way to transport it. This is in the back of an LX 570, just enough clearance for it to close like that. You could flip it around, stick it right along the back seat. Now, setting up big solar panels like this is sometimes tricky. What you're gonna wanna do is have these pointed towards the sun, because this is the foot, basically. So if it's in the middle of summer or something and the sun is directly overhead, you could lay it out like that and then you're pretty much done, right? I would get this into position pretty much how you want before unfolding it, because it's a lot easier to move, at least with one person, before you do that. Now, like I mentioned earlier, you don't want to bend these too much because you can damage the solar cells. So you kind of lift it up like this. It's very windy right now. So you can imagine this is kind of worst case scenario. You reach over here with one, get it up like that. I don't even know if we're in frame anymore, kind of, but just like that, and you're pretty much set up. Getting over 440 watts right now out of this 400 watt panel. I don't know if you can tell, it's mostly cleared up, but you can still see quite a few clouds in the sky. But right now we're overproducing 440 watts out of this panel. So you can see shade on the ground. Now we have a pretty good angle. Now in a perfect world, the shadow would be, you know, perfectly straight. So we're not exactly perpendicular to the sun. So we could probably get a few more watts out of it, but this is what you're gonna see at, you know, a more nearly full production. But even this is February. Sun is weaker in the winter months when the sun is lower, but we have here only 124 watts going and 1359 watts going out. This is with a space heater. That is with pretty much full overcast out here. As you can see, you can hardly even see a shadow on the ground from the solar panels. So not great weather for solar, obviously, but still putting some in here. Now this is a pretty heavy load. Like space heater is gonna be, you know, a huge load. Electric heating is super inefficient. So anyway, just wanted to show in a variety of scenarios where we have a lot going out, just a little bit going in. So obviously the amount going out is lower than the amount going in, so it's gonna die eventually. And this is estimating about 1.8 hours. So that's a setup like this. February, sun, overcast, big load. This is about worst case scenario for this unit. So here we have a setup, kind of a setup that I would say is a pretty common scenario where you have some portable solar panels, like a lot of people that have solar on their house that's set up for a house system or a grid tie system. So people may have some solar panels floating around. Maybe they have them mounted somewhere where they can just kind of use them for miscellaneous projects, but a lot of times it'll be a portable one. So you just kind of set it out. This is south facing. In a perfect world, you kind of want your solar panels to be exactly perpendicular to the sun. That means when the sun angle hits it, it's at a perfect right angle. That's, you know, in a perfect world, you do that. So these stands can allow some adjustability for the angle. Actually kind of shows some little pictures here to show you where to put it at what angle. And then furthermore, you can position this. So like in the morning when the sun's over there, you position it, and maybe a couple hours later you move it, and you move it a couple times throughout the day. If you can't, then you just kind of pick the middle spot, and that'll be the average of the day. But to maximize production, you want to basically point the solar panels at the sun wherever they are. A lot of times, if you don't have long cables, you will have some amperage drop the longer the run is. So there's a lot of factors with voltage and stuff like that, but you're either going to get a drop here or a drop on this end. So if you can't put your unit next to where you need to use it, you can either run long solar cables and move the unit where you're using it, or a very, very easy, because pretty much everyone has extension cords, run an extension cord to where you want to use it. So in this scenario, I have this and then an extension cord that's running into here, into the old bus. And I'm actually just heating things up in here a little bit before I do some demo, because it's a kind of cold day. We're turning out 1300 watts again on that space heater. And the fans aren't on at all. It's completely silent right now. No fans running. You can actually see the fans here. I don't know, yeah, you can see them here. Not running at all. Now it's a little chilly out. It's like, I don't know, upper 30s, lower 40s, but putting out a pretty big load and charging with solar, and it's very literally quiet right now. No fans running. Now this thing can handle a crazy load, so it has this whole side is filled with fans, and this whole side is filled with fans because you really need to cool that inverter off, especially if you're running 220 or 240 at 6,000 watts. But right now, it's kind of the thermal efficiency of the unit. Almost 1,400 watts going out, 120 watts going in, and completely silent, which is pretty rad. And now we'll do kind of like the tabletop, where I talk about the stuff that I care less about, because I can find that all on the website. But whenever I do a review video and I don't like do what everyone expects from a review video, which is just sit down and chatter off some specs, people get really mad at me. So now we'll get into the specs. I'll also show you a little bit of the app interface, and yeah. Join me here on the ground in my office, where we have this. We're gonna walk through some specs now, some boring specs, but you guys like to hear about it. Most of this you can read on the website, and most of it seems accurate. I will kick on, I'm not sure how loud it'll be, but I'll kick on a space heater here, plugged in to the unit. This is a standard kind of 1,500 watt space heater, though they usually draw a little bit less. Looks like it's pulling 1,200 watts roughly at 66%, 1.8 hours left of runtime there. Now, no fans on yet, so the fans are related to the thermals, how hot the battery gets, how hot the inverter gets. So prolonged usage will probably heat it up a little bit, but right now the only fan we're hearing is from the space heater there. I don't know if that's even coming through on the mic, but let's do some measurements here. So we got roughly 14 inches wide, roughly, with the feet, 15 inches, but the main kind of body area, probably about 14 inches, but with the handle and the feet, about 15 inches. This dimension, and with the wheels, we're about 27 1.5 inches tall. I believe it's about 132 pounds. So I can lug this around. Obviously, you're gonna wanna use the wheels. I wouldn't wanna carry this for any extended period of time, but it does have a nice handle right here, handle here, and a handle here on the back. The kind of dolly handle also pulls up and out. You saw me using that earlier. So honestly, one of the things that I really like about this unit is the form factor. Again, it's kind of nice and tall and takes up space. That will be better for some situations and worse for some situations. But again, like I showed earlier in the truck, you can also lay it down this way as well. It's kind of designed for that. Has some little rubber bumpers on the lower portion here, and the casters, you can see these ones swivel around and are lockable. So kind of easy even on this rug here to kind of roll around, get into position as you need. Operating temperatures are pretty good. It will discharge. That means you can use it from -4 degrees up to 104 degrees. And you can charge it. The battery always needs to be a little more warm to charge than it does to discharge. The battery is an LFP. To charge it, 32 degrees to 104 degrees there as well. And then so this side has all of your AC outputs, again with the trip here, the little plug to turn it on here. 6,000 watts of power out of the inverter with the NEMA 1450 plug up here. And the L1430 plug, you can charge an EV here on 240 volts at 6,000 watts. So if for some reason you wanted to take a big battery and go, put a few miles into an EV, you can do that with this kind of as an emergency. Think of it as bringing a gallon of gas to some broke down car. You could bring this to an EV and charge it at decent speed, 6,000 watts there at 240. Again, AC outlets, normal kind of 20 amp, 120 volt AC outlets here. The 3 on the left are the UPS. On the front, we have 300 watt USB-C power delivery ports and 2 12 watt USB-A ports with your car socket cigarette lighter type port. That is 12 volts, 10 amps, so 120 watts out of that. Power button, little light that you can turn off in the amp, and buttons to turn on and off, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, the car socket. The USB ports are on when the unit is on, so they don't have a separate control. And then here on the other side, again, we got 2 XT60 ports for solar, maximum of 2,400 watts of solar, accepts ranges from 11 volts all the way to 60 volts in here. Standard plug, it's nice. A lot of battery companies are going to this now. I applaud them. No power brick, just the kind of standard plug into the back of a desktop computer plug that is included, and you'll get up to 1,800 watts of charging. You can control the charge speed through the app. This is how you attach it to the external battery packs, which you can hook up to 6 of them. So this is almost a 4,000 watt hour, almost a 4 kilowatt. It's 3.8 kilowatt hour unit in the single one, and then you can get almost up to 27 kilowatts by adding the 6 expansion batteries. Fans along both sides, nice wheels, rubberized. They roll pretty well over my asphalt driveway. They're decent size, but if you're hucking through off-roading and gravel and stuff, you'll hit some resistance. But some of the bigger wheels, honestly, built into a unit, this is one of the biggest portable units there is, so I'm glad that it has a nice set of wheels on there. Again, 6,000 watts. You can combine 2 units, 2 of these units for 12,000 watts total. So if you're using this for more of a home backup and you really want to get more watts, you're really using more power out of your home in a power outage scenario, you can get 2 of these and combine them. And again, each of those can add 6 expansion batteries to get up to a total of, I wrote it down here, 53.8 kilowatt hours of batteries total. So you can build this into a pretty robust system if you're kind of adding all of the expansion things. Again, I don't have it, but it has this home kind of connect port over here that you can connect with their proprietary home setup. But a much easier solution that will work for a lot of people is if you have a backup generator input on your house, then you can just plug this cable in and plug it into your generator input. You got to be careful with that. I mean, not careful really, but if you're trying to run your air conditioner and your dryer at the same time or something, again, depending on the wattage of those, you'll probably trip this unit. So when you have a single one of these units, you're not going to be able to live like normal and just go gung-ho, just powering everything in your house at once. But if you do, understand the limitations of the system, this can theoretically back up an entire house. And the reason it can do that and some other units, some other single units anyway, can't is, again, I've said it a dozen times in this video, but it is one of the things that makes this unit unique is that it has a built-in 240 volt split phase. All right, so let's check out some of the app here so you can see, at a glance, shows you some information here, remaining power, percentage, the actual temperature of the unit. You can turn on and off all of your ports. DC input, it'll show AC input. That's the charging speeds. It'll show the wattage here. So let me just kick on that space heater again, and you can see the AC output will kick on there, showing 1302, 1338. It will adjust the remaining power at the top. Let's plug in something into a USB-C port. Just for kicks, you see it, there we go, illuminated, 12 watts, 37 watts, kind of is charging an iPad here, so 38 watts. You can adjust brightness. This brightness button here at the bottom is just kind of that LED bar, and then we can get into some settings here as well where you can adjust AC, charge speed, I just have it at the max. Unit timeout, I have never. Screen brightness high, timeout. Change the name, units of measurement. And then, firmware upgrades, user manual, stuff like that. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And then other than that, Anker's been in the game for a long time. I've used their chargers and their little batteries for years, so it's good to see them kind of dipping their feet into, in a big way, not really dipping their feet, they're going full bore into the big solar generator battery backup market. So they've made great things for years. I haven't had a lot of experience. I am testing another unit of theirs, the C800 as well, and both of the units seem really solid. Let's get into the app a little bit. Oh yeah, one more thing, 5-year warranty, which is pretty good. This battery is rated for 10 years of daily use. That is 3,000 cycles, maintaining 80% or more battery capacity after 3,000 cycles. So that's pretty good as well. And the app, super easy to connect, which is nice. I love apps for these kind of things. Depending on how you're using them, you don't have to come to the unit and control, and then you can control a lot more things through the app than you can just through the little interface here. You can do firmware updates, things like that as well. So yeah, this video was way longer than I intended it to be just because I talk a lot, but really like this unit. Again, some interesting form factor, interesting that it can do 240 out of a single unit. I am planning to get the expansion pack on this and see if I can use it, stay tuned to the channel, and just see if I can use it to back up my entire barn. I probably will hard mount some solar on that building, run it into this, and just see if it'll just hum along and do everything I need it to, because that'd be cool. All right, well, I'll put links down below. I believe you can get these on Amazon and through their website. I didn't talk about pricing because I think they're running a discount now. I'm not sure if the discount will still be there later. They have a bunch of package deals where you can get 2 of these. You can get this in a solar panel, you can get this in the home kit, or you can get this in expansion battery. So I think it's around $4,000 or under. Right now it's like $3,500, I believe, for the single unit. It is pretty expensive, but for what it is, the amount of power it puts out and kind of the unique features, it's a pretty well-priced unit, honestly. So yeah, that's it, the Anker SOLIX F3800. pretty cool unit. If you have any questions, let me know down below, feedback, whatever. I don't do these battery videos all the time, though I have tested a lot of them. I built the house that I'm in right now literally on solar and a similar, not this battery, but a similar kind of battery setup. I'm kind of using one, integrating a different one to power some of my house right now, and I'm gonna use this one to power the barn. So I have had a lot of, honestly, real world testing and use from these types of batteries, and I've been nerding out on them for, you know, since my YouTube channel started. I think one of the first ones I reviewed was like a Goal Zero Yeti 150. So yeah, I do think they're cool and serve a variety of uses. And with all that stuff about fragile grid, potential grid attacks, all that prepper type stuff, this would be a good singular unit to have that can handle a decent amount of solar input and power, you know, a wide variety of devices. So good time to pick one up. All right, well, until next time, guys, take care.